because I guess because of the stones in his belly. Happy Fairy Tale Friday, my lovely geeks and nerds and fairy tale lovers, I am guessing, because if you clicked on this video, you probably like fairy tales maybe as much as me. Who am I? I am Jule. I am the writer and creator of this channel that is called Brüder Film Tales, and I'm also German, and I grew up with fairy tales, especially the German ones, and I got very traumatized growing up. And so I thought I'm going to share this trauma, and I'm also going to share the bloody original versions of the fairy tales, because there are so many very, very fucked up fairy tales, and I think we sometimes tend to, in media, to make them more pretty, more sweet, more like Disney-like, and so I am here as your very own German fairy tale auntie to tell you the truth, tell you how it really was. And we get just traumatized together again, all over. Love it. So, this is going to be a limited series, by the way, because I just wanted to see if people like it or not. So, if you enjoy that, if you feel entertained, if you think, man, this is really cool, because there are a lot more fairy tales, just saying. You can, just click the like, subscribe button, the follow button, just comment if you want to, you know the drill. For now, this series, this limited series will be just 8 fairy tales. And I will, in my opinion, do the most famous ones from the Grimm brothers. So I will start this really cool limited series. I'm really excited because I love talking about that shit. So yeah, for the first one, I thought I'm going to start with what I think is one of the most famous fairy tales out there, and that is Red Riding Hood. And I'm ready with my coffee, so let's do this. So, before I start retelling the fairy tale of Red Riding Hood, I wanted to quickly tell you what my source is, because my source is like this little book, and it is the republishing of the original fairy tale collection by the Grimm brothers, and it first came out 1857, so it's such a fucking long time. I mean, wow. And but it's very fascinating for me that there are still these fairy tales that from, or like by the Grimm brothers that we still know the best, and they're very popular, and they're just like very, very well known. So this is really cool. And but as I said, little side fact to that, it's they collected these fairy tales. So the Grimm brothers did not really write them, they collected them, they wrote them down, and then they edited them. So the story I will tell you now, like the fairy tale, is definitely the original one by the Grimm brothers, but this is not the original one. And it's also, they edited the fairy tale, which means they made a child-friendly version, which is not really child-friendly, I think, because like I said, I grew up with that stuff, and I got a bit traumatized. And that's why we're here now. But also, I love them. I just in my very, very dark German heart, I love them. I love fairy tales and monsters and like the bloody fucked up stuff. So here we are. So also, before I start, I know, I'm sorry, but before I start retelling the story, I also want you to know that I will tell you what the original story of Red Riding Hood is, and it was written by a French fairy tale storyteller, writer, like a French writer, way before the Grimm brothers were in the scene and were like collecting them. So, and this, like the original one is like, yeah, very, very fucked up. But first things first, the Grimm version. All right, so got me a little coffee in. All right. So, once upon a time, there was a little girl. And all we need to know about this little girl is that she is pretty. And this is also very fairy tale common because whenever there's a little girl, if there's a woman, all you need to know is that they are pretty. This is the only character traits that matter, mostly in fairy tales, is that they are pretty. Yeah. Well, so this little girl, she lives in a village and she's like super pretty, right? So everyone is like, oh my God, you're so pretty. And even her grandmother is like, my God, you are such a pretty little girl. And I will gift you a little red coat because I think it fits you very well. And so the little girl also loves the red coat. She's like, so she's wearing it all the time. So people started to call her Red Riding Hood because they did not care about her name. They just were like, this little pretty girl with this red coat. This is like Red Riding Hood. So this is how she, was known from that day on, I guess. So for, I will only call her Red because I don't want to always say like the full name. Little Red. She was just living her life in this little village, having fun, being pretty and all. And one day her mother comes to her and is like, your grandmother, she really feels very weak and is very sick. You just take this basket with like good German bread and some wine. I'm assuming it might be some Italian wine because we Germans are very obsessed with Italian food and drinks. And so, I mean, there are good German wines too, don't get me wrong, but I feel like this might be some little like Italian wine and some very good German bread because German bread, the best. And so she gives us like her daughter and is like, okay, little Red, here you go. There's like the basket full of bread and wine. And bring this to your grandmother who lives very far away from this village in the woods alone and is sick and weak and is just living there in the woods, which is very suspicious if you ask me, because if a woman lives alone in the woods, she's mostly a witch, Just saying. We can also start some conspiracy theories and fairy tales. No. But so it doesn't matter to the story right now. It's just like my weird thoughts about that. So the little Red is like, okay, sure, I will go to grandma. I will take the basket full of bread and wine because this is the only thing you need if you feel sick and weak. You just need some bread and wine. And her mother is like, okay, well, but if you go into the woods, just be careful. Just go straight to your grandmother. Don't speak to anyone. Just like, don't go deep into the forest. Just like, go straight to your grandmother. Little Red is like, yeah, got it. So she walks into the woods, like with her little basket. And is like, yeah, so I'm going to my grandmother. And then the big bad wolf comes along. He sees little Red and is like, yummy. So he approaches her and is like, hey, what's up, little Red? Because he knows her name, I guess, like everyone. And little Red, who apparently has never met a wolf and is not freaked out by the fact that this is like a talking wolf and that this wolf is kind of like pretending to be human. I don't know. So she's not freaked out. She's just like very naive, I guess. So she's like, oh, hey, wolf, what's up? I'm going to my grandmother, like with this basket full of bread and wine. And the wolf is like, oh, how interesting. So where does your grandmother live? And Red is like, well, she gives him a very specific description. So she's like, just go straight ahead. There's like some trees. And then on the left side there down, is the house of my grandmother, whatever. And the wolf is like, oh, how interesting. Well, thank you for telling me. And also, don't you think you should pick some flowers for your grandmother? Or like maybe you just look around, Red. I mean, there's like birds that are singing. And also there's like some really pretty flowers. It's just you're so focused on bringing that stuff to your grandmother. Maybe you should enjoy the woods, be a little bit more present, what's around you. And little Red is like, oh, the wolf is right. There's some really pretty flowers. So she goes to the flowers, of course, is very distracted and wants to pick some flowers for her grandmother, which is a nice gesture, I guess. But of course, the wolf is like, well, this was my plan all along. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think you should question fairy tales. But at that point, I was like, why don't you eat her right there and now? I mean, okay, but, I'm not a wolf. I don't know. Maybe they have different kind of thinking. Who knows? So the wolf is like, oh, perfect. So she's distracted. So he goes to the grandmother, to her house, and knocks on the door. And the grandmother in there is like, well, who's there? And apparently the wolf can change his voice or so. I don't know. So he's like, well, it's me, Red, you know? And your grandchild, please let me in. I have some wine and bread for you. And the grandmother is like, oh, yeah, sure, come in, And so the wolf goes in there and he swallows the grandmother whole. He just like swallows her with one bite. Which I guess a fairy tale wolf can do. And then he dresses up as the grandmother. And just like, goes into her bed and is just waiting for Red. And meanwhile, Red, she picked some flowers and she's like, well, now I should definitely go to my grandma. So she's at the grandmother's house now. Is also knocking on the door and it's like, well, grandmother, sorry, English sometimes. Grandma, yeah, just say grandma. It's easy, I guess. Grandma, it's me. I got some bread and wine. And the wolf, again, very good in pretending to be human and changing his voice, apparently, is like, yeah, come in, sweetie. And little Red is going in there. And there is like a moment where she's like, something is weird about this. I don't know. It's like, it feels a bit creepy. But still, she goes on. She goes in there. She goes to the bed, to the big bad wolf, dressed up as her grandmother, just lying in there, pretending to be her. And I mean, it's a wolf, but she's not, she thinks, okay, something is really weird about my grandma, but she's somehow not, I don't know, seeing that this is a wolf and not a human. So she's going to the bed and is like, Grandma, do you have really weird ears? And the wolf, pretending to be the grandmother, is like, well, it's just so I can, like, hear you better. And Red is like, well, okay, but also, your eyes, they look really weird. What's with your eyes? And the wolf, again, pretending to be the grandmother, is like, well, so I can look at you better. And little Red, again, it's like, well, grandma, your mouth like looks really weird and your teeth. So what's up with that? And then finally the wolf is breaking the illusion, breaking the deception. And it's like, well, so I can eat you better. And then he swallows her whole. Like he also, like with one bite, whoop, swallows her. And then, because he ate two people. I mean, he ate like the grandma and little Red. And so he has like a huge belly now, So, and he's also getting very tired. He needs a nap now because you know how it is. If you eat a lot, like after that, you need a nap. So he decides to just like right there, right now, just take a nap in the bed of the grandmother. And he falls asleep. And he snores very loudly, apparently, because meanwhile, on the outside, in the woods, a huntsman, very conveniently, walks around and is like, he hears him snoring, and he's like, this does not sound as a human. So he's like, it's weird. Apparently, I mean, he's a huntsman. He probably knows how a wolf snores. I don't know. So he follows that noise, and he comes to the house. And he goes in there and he sees the wolf in the bed with his huge belly. And I guess he still is like dressed as the grandmother, but the huntsman is smarter, I guess. He knows like this is a wolf and he has a really huge belly. And then what he decides to do is, because he knows this wolf is like sleeping right now, so I will find out what is in his like really huge belly, because this looks weird to me. So he goes to the sleeping wolf and like he cuts open his belly. And the wolf, I mean, this must be a very deep nap he's in, or like maybe some food coma, like because he did not wake up. So the huntsman cuts open the belly, right? And like looks into it. And little red is plopping out of it. Like I just imagine this like the alien scene where it's like coming out, and so little red is like coming out, and it's just like, oh my god, what the fuck? I'm in this belly. I mean, she must be hugely traumatized. And then he like gets her out and is like, okay, here we go. And then the grandmother pops up too because she's in the belly too. So he also like, oh well, here's the grandmother. So like he also puts her out, and they are not hurt in any way. So because he swallowed them whole. So they're not hurt. They're just extremely traumatized, and I guess covered in like weird stomach, like goo and weird things and blood. So they just stand there, very traumatized, and they're like, okay, what should we do now? Because this wolf is still alive and still sleeping with his cut open belly. And so they have this really great idea. I mean, this is something I would definitely think of first. So they collect stones outside and they put the stones into the belly, and then they sew up the belly again. The wolf still sleeping, still not knowing what's happening to him. And then after that, they're like, well, this was great. So they go away and they hide and watch the wolf. And the wolf now is like, I don't know, finished with a nap, and is like waking up and is like, I don't know, it's like, it feels a little bit weird. I don't know if something has happened or not. And so he stumbles, like he gets up and he stumbles outside of the house, and then he drops down and is dead. Because I guess because of the stones in his belly. I don't know. It's weird. It's like, this is what happens. And so the huntsman, the grandmother, and little red watching him, hidden behind a tree, I guess, or like a bush, or I don't know, like hidden somewhere, and it's like, yeah, well, we defeated the big bad wolf with some stones in his belly, and we're like super traumatized, but everything is fine. And so because little red brought some bread and wine, so they just like have a little party now. They just sit together now, laugh about what happened, eat some bread, drink some wine, and just live their lives happily ever after. Oh, I just love fairy tales. So this is like the German Grimm version of the fairy tale, and which is like, I'm I don't know about you, but like the cutting open with the belly, I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, why would he not wake up? But fairy tales. So as I mentioned, and I need a sip of coffee first. There's a French version, the original version. The original version, which was written by Charles Perrault. He is the originator of the Red Riding Hood fairy tale. In French, it is called Le Chaperon Rouge. And this story version is a bit different. I mean, it's very similar in a way. So like Little Red, going out there, meeting the wolf, wanting to go to the grandmother, like gets swallowed and stuff. So, but as I mentioned in the beginning, the Grimm brothers, what they did, they made it a bit more friendly, like child friendly, because it is for the little German kids, And so the original version, there is no happy end. There's like Red Riding Hood will not survive the belly. She will be eaten and she will die. There is no happy end. There's no huntsman. There's no one is like rescuing her or her grandmother. And there's also a very, very creepy part in which the little Red Riding Hood needs to go into the bed with the wolf, because you remember the wolf is dressed up as the grandma and is like, pretending to be the grandma. And in the German version, she just stands by the bed and is like, what the fuck, why do you look so weird? But in the French version, the wolf says, no, no, come into my bed and come closer. And then he also wraps his hairy arms around her and presses her really close to her. And she needs to undress too, so she needs to be naked. And he's like embracing her. Well, yeah, so, and he's also in the beginning, when she meets him the first time, the wolf is very seductive. He's like flirting with her and like telling her how pretty she is and how sweet she is. And like he's very uncomfortably charming to her, to this little girl. So there's definitely the undertone of it is definitely, okay, just don't, little girls, stranger danger. Don't trust any weird guy who gives you like compliments and wants you to like go into the bed with you. And like I said, there's like no happy end. In the end, there is like she will just die horribly in the arms of a wolf. And yeah, nice fairy tale. Just I don't know if this was supposed to be for children too back then with Charles Perrault, but I guess so, because this is like, it's very typical. Most fairy tales, they were written because of like there's a moral story in there too, and this one definitely, it's like stranger danger. Like don't trust any strangers. Like don't, or you will be swallowed. You will be like, don't trust it. And especially little girls with like older guys, I guess, the very old tale. And yeah, so what a nice way to start a Friday, right? Oh, well, we're all traumatized though. Awesome. So, this was my first episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know the drill. I already said it in the beginning, like, subscribe, comment. As I mentioned, this is a limited thing I'm doing. So for the next week, the next Friday, the next Fairy Tale Friday, I will choose another fairy tale by the Grimm brothers. Also, if you're generally interested in what I'm doing, besides this weird little limited series about fairy tales, I'm also writing stories. I am also directing stories, like right now. And they're all very kind of in a similar way based on fairy tales, very dark fantasy kind of stuff. You can follow me on my social medias too. And yeah, until then, I wish you all a very nice Friday, happy weekend, and yeah, see you soon with another amazing, bloody, fucked up fairy tale. Bye!